Number 3. Toby Cole. For the staff at William B. Jack Elementary School in Portland, Maine, September 18, 1989 started off as a normal day. The students had just started to settle into their routines after the summer break. Then a disheveled girl in her early teens walked into the office. She didn't say anything, but she motioned frantically with her hands to a teacher's aide. The teacher's aide realized that the girl was doing sign language, so the aide went and got a teacher who could sign. The girl said her name was Toby Cole, and she needed help. The school staff convinced Toby to get into a car, and they drove her to a school for the deaf. When they got to the school, the police were notified, and they in turn brought in the FBI. Over the next 5 weeks, the FBI, child care experts, and psychologists interviewed Toby, and she had a harrowing story to relay. Toby said that she had been kidnapped years ago. She wasn't even sure if her name was Toby Cole, or if that was the name her kidnappers gave her. She said that she thought she was taken 3 years prior while she was living in a foster home in California. The only thing she could remember about the abduction was that the kidnapper was driving a van. She thought, but she wasn't sure, that she was born on Christmas Day 1974, which would have made her 15 years old. Then she started drawing pictures. Her drawings contained a lot of satanic and occult imagery. The experts soon pieced together that the girl had been shipped around the country and possibly into Canada, where she experienced horrible abuse. In some cases, the abuse took place during rituals that were both occult and satanic in nature. The FBI said they had no reason to doubt her story. The FBI tried to figure out the real identity of Toby Cole, but she didn't match any missing persons reports. Sadly, her real identity is not known. Her current whereabouts are not public, but the FBI says that she is safe. Number 2. Howard Green and Carol Marron. December 16, 1979 was a cold and foggy night in the New Jersey borough of West Paterson, which is known today as Woodland Park. Despite the fog, a driver on Route 80 spotted 2 bodies lying on a grassy shoulder. The police arrived on the scene and they identified the bodies as 53-year-old Howard Green and 33-year-old Carol Marron. They were a couple and they lived together in a basement apartment in Brooklyn, about 25 miles away from where their bodies were found. Green drove a taxi and he was an artist, and Marron was the secretary at the Pratt Institute, and she also designed clothes in her spare time. The medical examiner knows several oddities about the bodies. The first is that both victims had identical wounds. They were both beaten on the left side of their head and stabbed in the right eye. Both of them had a clump of hair in their hand. What was most odd about the murders is that nearly all their blood was drained. It was most likely drained using veterinarian syringes. The needle marks were found in the same places on both bodies. The police note that the couple was killed elsewhere and their bodies were dumped near the highway. The police went to the couple's basement apartment and found it in disarray, but they didn't think that the murders happened there. They looked around the apartment and found several books and paraphernalia associated with the occult. In the weeks that followed, the detective on the case said that he looked into all the usual motives, like jealousy and greed, but they led nowhere. This led the detective to tell the press that it was definitely a satanic murder and it wasn't a one-man job. He said that the identical wounds on both bodies suggest that 2 people performed the murders in unison. Sometime after the murder, reporter Maury Terry got a letter from an anonymous writer. The writer said that a year before Green and Marron were killed, Marron was asking about Ordo Templi Orientis, a secret society once led by famed occultist Aleister Crowley. The person who wrote the letter said that they were too afraid to sign their name. The writer has never been identified. One reason the detective on the case thought that the murders might be occult related is because of a person of interest. He was a neighbor who lived on the floor above Green and Marron. He moved out a year before the murders, but there were several reasons the detective wanted to interview him. The first is that he grew up in West Patterson, which is where the bodies were found. Secondly, the neighbor had a disturbing habit. While he lived above Green and Marron, he would catch mice. He would then cut off their heads and drain their blood. He left the blood splattered on the kitchen table. Finally, the neighbor told other people in the building that Green and Marron were witches. The detective never identified the man, and he only said that he was a drifter. He moved around a lot with his guitar and his dog. He was last seen in Oklahoma, and his current whereabouts are unknown. Number 1. Christian Frigerio. In 1996, Christian Frigerio of Milan, Italy, was 23 years old and he was working in construction. Frigerio liked heavy metal music, and he hung out at a metal pub in Milan called Midnight. In November of that year, Frigerio's mother noticed that he was wearing a pendant that had an occult symbol on it. She also noticed burn marks and human bite marks on him, but he didn't say what caused them. On November 14th, Frigerio called his brother from work. He told him that he shouldn't leave the house. Frigerio's boss noticed that he was acting strangely that day. He was nervous and jumpy. Frigerio left work at 6 p.m. and he went home. Not long after getting home, he got a phone call and he set off on his bike. Where he went is still a mystery to this day. Neither Frigerio nor his bike has ever been found. Frigerio's mother filed a missing persons report the next morning. The police learned that at the time of his disappearance, Frigerio was depressed because his father had recently died. So the police didn't put much effort into looking for him and thought he just died by suicide. Then in January 2004, a car accident in Milan revealed a possible explanation as to what happened to Frigerio. The driver, who was a young woman, and a man who was at the scene, were both arrested. The driver was identified as 18-year-old Elisabetta Ballerini. Her boyfriend, who drove his car to the scene, was identified as 27-year-old Andrea Volpe. The police asked the couple what Ballerini was doing driving the car, which didn't belong to her. It belonged to another woman, 27-year-old Mariangela Pezzotta. After a few hours of interrogation, Volpe said that they were trying to dispose of Pezzotta's car because they had killed her. The arrest of Volpe made the news, and one man who saw the news was Michele Tollis. Michele went immediately to the police station. Michele had been looking for his son, Fabio Tollis, who went missing 6 years prior when he was 16. He told the police that Volpe was a friend of his son's. With this new information, the police pressed Volpe on what happened to Fabio. Volpe told the police that he had been a member of a death metal band called Ferocity, and Fabio was in the band as well. The band was part of a larger cult called the Beast of Satan. It was started by Nicola Saponi and Paolo Leone, who went by Ozzy, in 1995, and it had around 15 members. The group was devoted to Satanism, and it was fueled by drugs. Mario Mancioni was a 14-year-old cult member, and he claimed to be a medium. He said that Fabio's girlfriend, 19-year-old Kira Marino, was the personification of the Virgin Mary. Even though Marino's bedroom was decorated with satanic paraphernalia, black candles, and a goat skull, Mancioni convinced the other cult members that she was the Virgin Mary. The cult decided she needed to be killed as a sacrifice to Satan. They also decided to kill 16-year-old Fabio because he wanted to leave the cult and the band. First, they tried to burn the couple alive in a car on New Year's Eve 1997. it didn't work. Fabio and Marino got out of the car and only suffered minor burns. Unfortunately, they didn't realize that the cult members were trying to kill them. Over 2 weeks later, on January 17th, Fabio and Marino were hanging out with Volpe, Sapano, and Mancioni. They listened to music and drank beer for most of the day. Then, that night, they went out to some woods outside the town of Somma Lombardo. Using a knife, one of the cult members started stabbing Marino. Fabio saw that his girlfriend was being attacked, and he tried to save her. When he did, he was struck with a hammer. After the young couple was dead, Volpe, Sapone, and Mancioni pushed their bodies into a hole that they had another cult member dig 2 days earlier. Once the bodies were buried, Volpe said something to the effect of, "And now zombies, walk if you can." 6 years later, Volpe and Elisabetta Ballerini were hanging out at a home near Somma Lombardo. They decided that Volpe's former girlfriend, Mariangela Pizzotta, needed to die because she knew too much about the cult's illegal activities. Volpe called her and asked her to bring over a videotape that had a recording of his band's concert. When she arrived, Volpe shot her. Volpe then called Nicola Sapone to help with the body. The three of them decided to bury her body in a greenhouse that was on the property. After they loaded her into a wheelbarrow, they noticed that she wasn't dead. That didn't stop them from burying her. Supposedly, Sapone killed her with a shovel before she was completely buried. He then mocked Volpe for not being able to kill properly. After Pizzotta was dead and buried, Ballerini got into her car and Volpe got into his own. They were going to dump the car in a nearby river, but Ballerini, who was high and drunk, got into an accident which led to them being arrested. After confessing, Volpe led the police to the bodies of Fabio and Marino. In total, 7 cult members, including Ballerini, were arrested. Ballerini was sentenced to 24 years, but she was released from prison in May 2017 after serving just over 10 years. Mancioni was sentenced to 16 years, Volpe was sentenced to 30 years, and Sapone was given a life sentence. Besides the 3 murders that they were convicted of, there are several other deaths connected to the beasts of Satan. The first one is a murder that happened 3 months before Fabio and Marino were killed. The victim was Maddalena Russo, who was an ex-girlfriend of Volpe's. She was strangled to death with a belt in September 1995, and her murder remains unsolved. Then, 9 months after the murders of Fabio and Marino, one of the band members, Andrea Bonte, committed suicide. When Volpe was confessing to the murders, he said that the other cult members drove Bonte to kill himself. Bonte was supposed to be there the night that Fabio and Marino were killed, but he was a no-show. The cult members considered him a traitor for not showing up, and for months they tormented him. Just before he died, they put hallucinogenic drugs into his coffee and repeatedly told him to kill himself. In September 1998, Bonte, who was high and drunk, killed himself by driving his car into a wall. Another death that Volpe mentioned in his confession was the death of Andrea Ballerini, who was not related to Elisabetta Ballerini. He was an associate of the members of the Beast of Satan, and he was found hanged on May 7, 2000, in his former high school's courtyard in Somma Lombardo. 3 friends of one of the cult's co-founders, Nicola Sapone, also met untimely ends. The first was Stefano Lagoni, who was hit by a transport truck in May 1998. Then on December 14, 2003, 26-year-old cemetery worker Antonio Lombardo set himself on fire. Finally, on May 5, 2004, Luca Colombo, who was the son of the cemetery's florist, was found hanged. Many of these friends and associates were known to hang out at the Midnight Pub. Midnight is the same club that Christian Frigerio frequented before he disappeared. Frigerio's mother says that she remembers him mentioning the group, the Beasts of Satan. She also said that before he disappeared, she remembered that a young man named Ozzy called the house. In 2008, newfound interest in the case was stirred when Mario Mancioni suggested looking for Frigerio in a park in Milan. Mancioni admitted to knowing Frigerio. Before he went missing, Mancioni was going to try and contact Frigerio's dead father in a seance. Mancioni said that he wasn't there when Frigerio was killed, and he didn't know exactly where he was buried. Frigerio's mother went to the park with a reporter, and under an old mattress she found a bag that belonged to her son. Besides the bag, she found a hat and a screwdriver that belonged to her son. Close to where the bag was found, she found a tree that had carvings in it, and the carvings looked like occult symbols. The police searched the park and found no trace of Frigerio. They aren't sure if Frigerio's mother placed his possessions there or if she actually found them. They also think that Mancioni may be lying to get better conditions in prison. Frigerio's mother is sure that her son was one of the first victims of the satanic cult. She said that she is sure her son is buried in the park and the police didn't look hard enough for him. The police said that they have put enough resources into Frigerio's case and they are no longer looking for him. Frigerio's mother wants to know where he is so she can go pray at his grave. Thanks a lot for watching the video. Hopefully you found it interesting. If you did, please subscribe. We post a new video every Thursday and Sunday. You can also like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. The links are in the description below the video. But that's all for now. Thanks again for watching.